interconnect. You're the first up, so we're going to give you the floor.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for having me here this morning. It'd be nice to see you all in person, but such is life these days. Before I get started, I just want to say, when you talk about rising to the challenge of a crisis, that for me has been, Marcia and the Titusville Chamber and her team there, and it's from day one. I think Marcia was the one who figured out Zoom and GoToMeeting, and rallied the rest of the business organizations to really work together. And it wasn't about getting credit; it was about doing the right thing for the community. So I think Marcia and the chamber have really not only been a asset to Titusville, but to the county as a whole. So I want to say thank you on behalf of the EDC and me personally. It's been a nice thing to see. When Erin originally invited me to present to the committee this morning, she wanted me to talk about an effort that pre-COVID I'd kind of been pushing, which was to get the chambers and the realtors and the EDC and the business community as a whole to be more engaged, particularly at the county level, because this is what sets us apart from the state and other locations, as we try to be a good place for businesses to to grow and to create jobs and to really make this a viable community. And if this was another group, I might get more into that, but you guys get it. You're engaged as much as anybody here. You've got the candidate meet and greet on August 11, and so what I thought it would be better to do this morning is to kind of equip you with some perspective on what's been happening in our local economy over the last decade, and what's been happening during the pandemic, and why this probably underscores that it's more important to be engaged, because a lot of the victories that we've had sort of post shuttle were pretty narrow when it comes to the county commission. And we'll look at some of the numbers as to how diversifying our economy over the past 10 years has really made us a leader in the state of Florida, and is helping us better weather the COVID-related challenges that we're facing now. Can everybody see my screen? See the PowerPoint deck? Great.
Yes.
I think most of you know the EDC, but if you don't, we're the economic development organization for Brevard County. We're a private, not-for-profit, which enables us to be more nimble and attentive to the needs of the business community, and it also enables the county and the state to leverage private dollars. If it was all county or all private, that's not the best winning arrangement, and this is a model that's worked at the state level and it's worked at the county level for Florida, and frankly, we want to connect the bigger employers to the community, right? We want them to be involved. We don't want them to be behind their gates on their campuses. We want them to take a vested interest in the success of our local economy. So that's really the model of the EDC. Our overall goal is to secure the economic future of Brevard County, and we do that by helping attract new business, retaining existing businesses and helping them expand, and promoting policies that are going to be pro-business and pro-worker. And a big part of that is diversifying the tax base. And as we look over some of the 10-year numbers that I'm going to show you, when we had all our eggs in the NASA basket or the shuttle basket, we were much more susceptible to changes at federal policy and downturns in the economy. And in the case of the last recession, they happened at the same time. So it was kind of an all hands on deck approach to getting things back on track. And you'll see how that's worked over the years and why it's probably important to keep those policies going. I think everybody in Titusville knows this acutely, but let's look at what the facts on the ground were. The recession and the announcement of the shuttle kind of happened within 2 years of each other. And in 2008, you really saw the layoffs starting to come. And we'll see other charts, but those 8,000 to 10,000 layoffs turned into about 19,000 jobs lost. And that's got ripple effects throughout the community. So what did the EDC do? This is pretty relevant to what's happening now, actually. We see in Titusville, Lockheed is expanding from KSC into the old Astronaut Hall of Fame ATX building. How did this happen? So, the EDC was looking for something to replace all those shuttle jobs and leverage, the brain power that we had locally, and that took tapping guys like Lee Solid, who have been around for a long time, and he came out of retirement to work with the EDC. And early on, they identified what NASA was looking at to sort of follow the shuttle, which was the crew at the time called the Crew Exploration Vehicle. And they had not even awarded this contract yet, but the EDC knew that Boeing and Lockheed Martin were vying for it. And typically a company wins a contract and they decide where they're going to site something. In this case, the EDC in Brevard County reached out to these companies and said, hey, would you consider siting it here if you win it? And we worked to get state funding to refurbish or prep some of the KSC facilities, the operations and checkout building, and make that available to the winner of this contract. So that's really kind of an unprecedented way of doing economic development. It's kind of putting the cart before the horse, but in our case, it worked. And now, you've got Lockheed Martin with a multi-billion-dollar contract with NASA to build, at this time, a half dozen of those Orion spacecraft, which for the moon mission will be known as Artemis. The first Orion/Artemis is actually it's ready. It's on the Cape. And that's going to be an unmanned mission that's going to go well beyond the moon and back. So that's pretty exciting. We had always been just a place for launch, and now we're actually manufacturing and assembling spacecraft and rockets. Over the past 10 years, you look at the tail of the tape here. Over 9,500 new jobs. Close to 7,400 retained jobs. Nearly $2 billion in capital investment. You look at some of the names here, it's a who's who of aerospace, but we're also making medical devices and semiconductors and home building supplies and pleasure craft and you name it. So I like to say the Space Coast always made history. We still make history, now we make everything else, which is a pretty good problem to have. So we did an economic impact study back in 2015, so you can extrapolate that these numbers are even bigger now. But what does this mean for the local economy? And you're looking at a lot of spending. That's a lot of discretionary income for what these jobs are creating, and that has benefits and to the tune of, in this case, $1.36 billion in the local economy. And those people are buying houses, they're buying cars, they're buying food, going out to eat, they're investing, they're using healthcare. And healthcare is one of our biggest employers, as it is in many areas. So this has a huge impact in the area. And when you consider, the small amount of money that the county or the state is investing in economic development efforts or using in terms of economic development tools such as the ad valorem tax abatement or QTI at the state level, or the money that went into refurbishing some of the legacy facilities at KSC, this pays for itself, many times over, and it's really changed the economy. And we'll look at some of those numbers. Brevard really, for a county that is just surpassing 600,000 in population, we really punch above our weight. And you look at the comparisons to some of the other larger counties across the state, and in terms of the jobs that we're attracting and retaining, we're outpacing much bigger peers. And you look, we've even retained more jobs than Orange County has attracted in that time period, which is pretty remarkable. This is a chart that you're going to see reflected in some of the other ones going forward, but it's significant because you really see what happened to us in terms of job growth and how far behind the rest of the country we really were at the depth of the recession. And then you see how not only did we surpass the national average and where we were previously, but we're far beyond that. And that's something you're going to see in job growth and taxable sales and all these other good indicators of economic health. Hold on a second, I have a little technical difficulty here, folks.
It happens to the best of us.
No, I don't want to leave the meeting. There we go.
There you go.
This is a pretty good indicator of how far we've come. So the Milken Institute has an index of the best performing cities. And a big part of that is where jobs are being created. And from 2018 to 2020, we jumped 47 places into the top 10. And you look at that top 10, and it's some pretty good company. There's some pretty sexy names in there, in terms of Austin and Seattle and Dallas. And we actually leapfrog places like Nashville and Spartanburg, South Carolina, where they make more BMWs there than they do in Germany. It's a pretty big deal, and I've seen this happen in other areas. I relocated here from Nevada. The reason Reno is up there so high is because Tesla kind of escaped California and built the big battery factory in Reno, and Reno went from a punchline of a joke to being near the top of lists like this because they've got a factory that's making all these batteries and powertrains for the Tesla Model 3, and they've attracted other California refugees, as we call them. So the turnaround for a place, we've seen it happen here. Austin's another good example. College town, and it was always kind of weird, and now it's become the 11th biggest city in the country, and is likely actually to get a new Tesla Cybertruck factory. But I'm not saying we need to be the 11th biggest city in the country, but certainly having jobs that can employ people in high-end jobs like engineering and in entry-level jobs like production that offer good wages and good benefits. Everybody's houses have equity as opposed to being underwater. These are good problems to have. So taxable sales is a pretty good measure of your economic health. We're getting into some of the post-COVID numbers here. April, we saw nearly 25% decrease in taxable sales. That's pretty understandable considering how shut down everything was. But considering they're down to 2016 levels, we've definitely been in worse spots before. And I think one of the big things is we're now the second most industry diversified economy in the state for a place that's called the Space Coast. That's a pretty interesting stat. And so certainly the restaurants, retail, hospitality, tourism, are taken on the chin, but we've got a core of 500 plus manufacturers that in many cases were deemed essential critical, and in cases like medical device manufacturer Aeron, they actually saw their business go up because they're manufacturing ventilators. We've got people who are still employed, they're making a lot of money, and if we can whip this virus or return to some normalcy, there's going to be a lot of discretionary income in the community that's going to help the restaurants and tourism come back. If you look at manufacturing job growth in the state of Florida, again, you talk about Brevard, punching above its weight. We have led the state for the past 4 years now. So this is we've managed to make this a an attractive place to relocate for businesses and grow jobs. And you know, these are jobs where, you know, people say we don't make anything anymore. I mean, we do in Brevard County, and you know, you don't even necessarily have to have a college degree. You know, we've got a certified production technician program. It's a 10-week online course. It's continued, you know, during the pandemic. We've still got students taking the course, and you know, these companies are hiring. We recently found out, you know, you look at something like career and technical education, Brevard Public Schools, the O'Galley High School aviation program, you put out some new graduates, and Embraer snatched up 5 of them. So, you know, some kids are deciding what they're going to do this summer. You know, these new graduates already know they're going to be starting their career in advanced manufacturing, making good wages and benefits, and certainly not going into debt. You know, to go to a online school for, you know, big bucks and incur student loans. So I mean, there are advantages to, you know, growing our economy in this way that give people choices that maybe they wouldn't have before. You look at the concentration in manufacturing that we have versus other counties. You know, Brevard is leading the way. You know, that's something that the governor has pointed out in speeches about the state of Florida's economy. I mean, this is really exceptional, and you know, we're you know, Florida is creating, I think, about 80% more manufacturing jobs than the national average, and the fact that Brevard is at the top of that growth really says something. And Marcia, if I might borrow another one of your expressions, you know, this is ours to lose, which is why we need, you know, people like you engaged at the local government level. In terms of home sales, the median sales price is, you know, as high as it's ever been. We've got less inventory right now, and that may be the fact that, you know, people are kind of reluctant about, all right, if I sell, what am I going to do? But let me go over some of the other numbers for you. You know, closed sales are down for May. So we closed 716 sales compared to, you know, close to 1,100 year over year. So that's taken a hit, but we've got new pending sales are up by nearly 18%. New listings are up by a little bit, and that median sales price is a good healthy indicator about, I think, the future of our community. And certainly, you know, for you homeowners on the call, I think, you know, this is a pretty big turnaround from not too long ago. It's pretty healthy indicator of what people think about in terms of Brevard County. You look at how the wages have gone up and the household income just over, you know, in this case, 8 years, and you know, households, you know, making over six figures, you know, has increased by, you know, 100%, 90%. So, you know, we're growing wages at both ends. Like I said, we're attracting engineers. You know, we're finding, you know, new career paths for people who, you know, maybe didn't have them before in the production side of things. You know, so these are good healthy numbers all around. So this is the unemployment rate. The next few slides are going to get into that. And if you recall from the earlier slide, you know, Brevard during the last recession, you know, had a higher unemployment rate than the rest of Florida. It had a higher unemployment rate than the national average. And now, because we've diversified our economy, you know, we're a few points under Florida and you know, a point under the national average. And it may not seem like much, but we went from, you know, basically full employment, under 3% unemployment, and you know, that 1 or 2 point, you know, difference. I mean, those are your family members, those are your neighbors, you know, maybe people on this call who, you know, we're doing better than they would otherwise, and you know, that's a pretty big difference. So it's nice to see compared to the last time around that we are hanging tough. We were talking about Orange County, I think, before everybody got on, and you look, they really, you know, took it on the chin from the tourism standpoint, and that's certainly not for the state's revenue. But here's a metropolitan area that we're pretty closely tied to, and that's a pretty significant difference right there. And had we not retained the aerospace industry and diversified our economy, we might be looking at something closer to Orange County than what we're seeing now. Here's some of the other peer counties. We're doing better than these other major metropolitan areas, and I think those manufacturing numbers have a lot to do with that. This is us against ourselves versus last year, so I mean it's pretty startling to see, nevertheless, what happened when you shut down the economy. So hopefully some of the news that we're seeing about vaccines and this winding down, certainly the low death rate is encouraging, but we've got a lot of ground to make up compared to where we were, which was basically full employment, and we had more jobs than people to fill them, really, which is why we were looking at workforce development programs. Let's talk about some good news. What's next? During the height of the pandemic, we were really happy to be able to share that Ariane Supersonic, which is actually a startup based out of Reno, Nevada, has chosen Melbourne as their global headquarters. There's going to be a big not only their headquarters and research and development and engineering, but manufacturing. So you're looking at potentially up to 700 new jobs, average annual salary of 100,000, $300 million in capital investment. And this is good for the whole county, right? These folks you're putting $60 million annual salary into the local economy. People are going to be choosing different places to live, spend their money, have a beer at Playa Linda, right? And this is just great news, and it says a lot about the future of Brevard's economy. And as you may recall, not too long ago, the Embraer deal for Melbourne, started out small. It's expanded, multiple times since, and then it resulted in another facility in Titusville. So this has a bigger impact than just the initial numbers, which are pretty eye-popping to begin with. L3 Harris, I think, is a real success story. We were able to retain Harris when they were considering offers to go elsewhere, and since they merged with L3 to be become one of the biggest defense contractors in the world, they're number 250 on the Fortune 500 list. We have a Fortune 500 company that chose to be headquartered here. That says a lot. They employ close to 8,000 people locally. They're adding more, and Bill Brown, who was the Harris CEO, he started off the tenure of the new company at the helm, and then he will be succeeded by the L3 CEO. So you've got two top executives that thought that this was a good place to be and run their global business. Getting to Titusville, Fleet Ballistic Missile Headquarters. This is a huge success story and a good example of how the long game of economic development is played. The EDC and county partners were able to keep the Naval Ordnance Test Unit, NO2, off the BRAC list. Between the shuttle, NO2, we were really behind the 8 ball, and we're able to turn this into a positive. So you keep NO2 off the BRAC list for moving to Georgia, and Lockheed Martin, has this long-term contract on the Fleet Ballistic Missiles. They've had it for 60 years. They're going to have it for decades going forward. And they eventually, in order to be closer to their big customer, relocate their Fleet Ballistic Missile headquarters from Sunnyvale, California, Silicon Valley, to Titusville, Florida. And they bring with it 350 new jobs. They've got a lot of land there in Titusville, and I think they have big plans for it. So that's Lockheed Martin, not only in terms of space and Orion expanding there, but you got Fleet Ballistic Missile, and both those are contracts that are locked up for a while. And now we've got leadership here, right? The decision makers have a vested interest. They're EDC members. I had a great conversation with Sarah Isa, the VP who heads up this operation, not too long ago. And, we, as people who had, relocated the area long ago, we were talking about how much we love it and comparing it to other places. And she's just so happy to be here. She was paying exorbitant prices in the Bay Area and dealing with all the issues there that they have in terms of crime. And, she was talking about how difficult it was to recruit engineers, say from like Purdue University, trying to get an engineer to go out the Bay Area, can't find a place to live. And then, they move there and their car gets broken into, first week on the job. So she mentioned, you'll be happy to hear this, that a lot of the folks who did make the move from California just love Titusville. I think it gives them everything that they were missing in California, great cost of living, quality of life, access to waterfront, and that community feel that maybe they were missing elsewhere. So Lockheed Martin loves being where they are now, and that's going to be a good asset for you all going forward.
And we love them, definitely.
Absolutely. And Sarah, I think you talk about somebody who's got a bright future. I can't divulge everything, but I think there are big things expected for Lockheed Martin in Titusville.
Yeah.
They've got the campus there.
We have Angel Crespo is on our board, and they're just wonderful chamber partners, but more importantly, they are vesting themselves in the community immediately and in a big way, and it's much appreciated.
Absolutely, and that's the model of the chamber and the EDC, right? Is we don't want to just get them here and let them do their thing. We want them to have a stake, and they're doing that. They're great community partners. You love to see that happen. Blue Origin. I mean, you've got the two richest men in the world. Well, Elon's like number 5 or whatever, but they think this is a good place to be. I always say the Blue Origin factory looks like something out of a Marvel movie. I mean, it might as well be CGI special effects, but I mean, this is a perfect example of the EDC being proactive, working with the state, Space Florida, EFI, leveraging our economic development tools. And you go from, all right, the rockets are built elsewhere, the spacecraft are built elsewhere, to, this is a huge investment in, what could have been a liability, old KSC properties, launch pad, whatnot, and now you've got, a huge rocket factory that's going to be, those New Glenn rockets are going to be tested next year. I mean, I can't wait to see those. And you get the biggest water tower in the world now, arguably. So this is, who could have foreseen this in 2005 when they announced the shuttle retirement? I mean, that has had to happen.
I'm glad to see that construction picture, Brian, because I didn't drive out that road for a while, and I went out and there's like 3 new buildings there, and I was stunned. So I was convinced that it was CGI. They were just projecting them, to be honest. So that, speaking of CGI, so I'm glad to see that construction picture, because
it did happen. And for special effect, I think I'm out at Space Florida Exploration Park. I started the EDC, and then I went back a few months later, and it had doubled in size. So, in terms of you tell people from outside the area, hey, I'm in the Space Coast, and they're like, well, what's that? Where's that? I think people know Cape Canaveral. You tell them about that, they get it. But I really think, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. Other people have probably heard me say this before, that maybe in 5 years, especially with what's happening in our major metropolitan areas now in terms of COVID and social unrest, that this is going to be a very, very popular area, and I think we want to do our part to retain what makes it successful and the quality of life we want. But people are going to know about it. We're certainly the envy of Florida, and I think I meet people from relocating from across the country, from Central Florida, South Florida. I met an engineer who's working at L3 Harris now the other week, and he was working at one of the national laboratories in New Mexico, and he and his wife undertook a 2-year project to figure out where they wanted to go. And they looked at the Bay Area, they looked at Colorado, and it wasn't even close. Space Coast met everything that they were looking for. They got 3 kids, they got a new house in Viera. And so, you know, I run into people like that all the time. I'm kind of in a similar boat, so it's nice to see. You know, everybody is very excited about SpaceX, you know, Crew Dragon, and rightfully so. I just think it's one of the bright spots of 2020. It's a low bar, but still, it'd be exciting in any year. You know, Orion is assembled here, so you know Lockheed likes to spread the love across the country. You know, still, you know, you're looking at 350 people working on Orion. We manufacture Starliner here, and Boeing last year moved their headquarters here. So we've got, you know, instead of just like I said, the place where this stuff happens, now the decisions are being made. You know, the products are being made. And once you have the decision makers in place, you know, that's something that's got staying power. So it'll be very exciting to see, you know, a made in Brevard spacecraft, you know, carry astronauts to the International Space Station. I mean, how exciting will that be? Firefly, this is a rocket startup from out of Austin. So they're slated to build a factory here on the Cape. We'll see how that progresses, but you know, it just shows you how different, you know, the space industry is now, you know, compared to when it was just the government doing it. Obviously NASA, we love them, it's still a big player here, but it's, you know, it's a different kind of industry. And you know, I think if you want to kind of look at parallels, it's almost like, you know, Silicon Valley, right when, you know, the computer industry was starting to take off, where, you know, the government was still, you know, kind of involved in what would become the internet, and then that became privatized, and you just have you know, an industry basically created, you know, it's sort of a wild west situation. But you know, we of course still have the FAA and 45th Space Wing involved and things like that, but this is a big diversification of that industry. You know, everybody knows Northrop Grumman in Melbourne, but they're going to build the Omega rocket, which is you know, as big as, maybe a little bigger than New Glenn, a little smaller than NASA's SLS. But I mean, it's almost an embarrassment of riches. There's just too much stuff to keep track of. I think any one of these things we would have been overjoyed to have, and now we've got them all. And you know, the thing that we've got to push back against, and that's where you all come in, is that, well, this would have happened. You know, why wouldn't they be here? Well, you know what? Alabama and Virginia and South Carolina and Colorado and certainly California doesn't want to lose this. Everybody, you know, is making a claim for these companies and these manufacturing facilities and launch. You know, I mean, geographically we're blessed, but you know, that can be overcome. So you know, it's really imperative for us to stay engaged and not, you know, forget being business friendly. Let's just not be hostile. So, you know, that's something where, you know, you in the business community talking to your elected officials and saying, you know, Northrop Grumman, you know, has an effect on my business, you know, and I deal with people that work there, and you know, it's you know, I think Kirk Hall at CenturyView had a great analogy of why he's in the EDC, and he wants the B2B services to be viable in Brevard County, because he doesn't know when he'll need them. So you know, you have a diversified economy that, you know, has major employers and businesses of varying sizes, because you know, you may have to go elsewhere for essential services, and you know, as we've seen with COVID, that becomes problematic. SpaceX, of course, just, you know, how cool. You know, friends from outside the area were blown away that, you know, I could watch that from my driveway. Yeah, Space Force, here's another great opportunity for us. We're in this process now. There had been not too long ago sort of a leaked short list that we were not on, but I think it helps to have the president be a Florida resident. This is, you know, a swing state, so to speak. But we're engaged in this process right now. We had to self-nominate as a community, and we did so as the Palm Bay, Melbourne, Titusville MSA, based on the criteria that that the Air Force put out. But I think we've got a strong case to make, and this is going to be a process that continues throughout the year. But you're looking at from the Space Force HQ that we're trying to vie for. About 2,000 military and civilian jobs, $2 billion in investment. And obviously, if you look at like No2 on a smaller scale and how that attracted Lockheed Martin, if you have the HQ for Space Force Space Command, that's pretty enticing for a lot of these companies who want to do business to be located here. And if you're doing launch and having the decision makers, which we mentioned before, is being pretty important. This would be a nice win. There are some other commands too related to Space Force that if we don't win the HQ, we could go after. But this is an interesting process that we're engaged in. No need to tell you guys about the launches. It seems like it's a pretty regular thing now. Not that it's any less neat, but the frequency is certainly being ramped up, and might get used to it. I like this because you look at the Blue Origin rockets there, and it's just incredible that they're going to land those back here after they take off. I can't imagine what that's going to look like. There's that Northrop Grumman Omega rocket, and then you've got the various SLS configurations, and that's what's going to carry the Orion Artemis missions. So can't wait to see what that looks like when that's happening. Like I said, I think New Glenn is supposed to happen next year, first launch, and I think Artemis 1 is next year as well. So that's, once we put 2020 to bed, good riddance, we can look forward to that. Future challenges, I won't get into this too much, but Marcia's been a part of these conversations, and unfortunately, kind of COVID and some other bandwidth issues, kind of slowed this down a little bit. But we need to think about what Brevard County is as a community, what we have to sell to other people, because again, we don't want to become Central or South Florida, but we do need to be growing in a smart way and attracting the talent, like engineering talent, for instance, because we're creating all these jobs. Our nation's schools, and even globally, we're not producing enough engineers to meet the demand. And like I said, there's that guy from New Mexico who's working at L3 Harris. He could have gone anywhere. He went here for a certain set of criteria. So we've got to figure out in the coming years, who are we and how do we present that, within Florida and then within our region and across the country and globally. So that's a process that hopefully, we'll be involving stakeholders like you and talking about in the coming year. Marcia, for your information, I think we're kind of, we might do a focus group or two, but we're kind of hitting pause on the survey because this is really just becoming such an outlier year that I don't think we could use the data in the way that we'd want to.
That makes sense.
Understandable. So, but that's kind of what I wanted to share with you all today. Just so you have a sense that, things may seem good or they may seem bad given what's going on, but we've got a good story happening here. And, to give you an example, and this has happened many times, the vote for the Fleet Ballistic Missile deal, right, which let's be frank, is going to an even bigger campus and more jobs and more leadership. That was not a unanimous vote on the county commission. Embraer, which kind of kicked off the diversification of our local economy in terms of manufacturing jobs. You know, you don't get Embraer. You guys don't get the facility in Titusville. You probably don't get Northrop Grumman or Arian. And you think about the economic impact there, that was a 3-2 vote. So one vote another way and it doesn't happen. I think we're seeing now with the CARES Act funding how important it is to have elected officials who understand the speed of business and the cost benefit of perhaps dealing with local government and you know what some of the relief that's being offered, you know, maybe what makes it less palatable or even worth a business's time to try to accomplish the goals that federal funding is supposed to accomplish. So, you know, I hope this is at the very least interesting and helpful for everybody. And, you know, I think, you know, I'll reiterate as Marsha says, it's ours to lose. And, you know, another, you know, important thing is I think the days of being provincial within the county, you know, geographically, we've got a big county and, you know, sometimes it seems like, you know, one end is planet away from the other, but, you know, it's not the case. This is our, this is the area that we have a say in. And, you know, I think what I want to see Titusville be the best version of itself and to be successful. And, you know, that's going to benefit the rest of Brevard County and you know, it's going to help our schools and it's going to help the amenities that we want to see here. And it's going to help infrastructure and all that good stuff. So, you know, if anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to try to field them. But, you know, hopefully this is, you know, inspires you to get more engaged. I mean, obviously you already are, but, you know, let's share it with the other people of the committee and the other members of the chamber. And you know, I'll do the same here with the EDC. And, you know, Al's been in the audience for a similar presentation at SCAR. And, you know, I guess you could say I've got the zeal of a new convert, but I think it's real. And I want to, you know, I've got a toddler and another one on the way. So, you know, I want to see this place, you know, be successful. And that's, you know, we're here for the long run. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's all wonderful information. And you're right. I have the zeal of a long timer, I guess, but I'm still passionate about this community. And I think that it is inspiring to see that in spite of everything, we are coming together as a community, probably more than we ever have in the past. And so it gives me great hope. And I love the Community of Choice initiative. I realize with COVID, we've been interrupted, but I think determining what measures we want to, you know, hold ourselves up to and what's important to our community in terms of our values and our, you know, our desires for where we want to be and where we want to live is an important exercise for us all to do. And I'm excited that the EDC is leading that effort and super happy to be a part of it. So, Al, I muted you, so you can unmute yourself if you have. Sorry. There you go.
Oh, here I am. I'm back. All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much. Even though
Does anybody have any questions? Joe?
Oh.
I do have a question for Brian. The Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. You know, I grew up here in Brevard, and like a lot of Brevardians, if you haven't been out there just in 2 years, let alone 5 years, that whole complex is just amazing. The visitor center, the shuttle experience, you know, the heroes. What kind of impact does that theme park have for attracting? I know it might be kind of, I don't know, I think theme parkish, but you got to believe that if you go to Saturn V and you have one of those tables or one of the dinners underneath Saturn V, I mean, that's such a nice venue. What does that have on attracting some of these big aerospace companies, do you think?
You know, certainly the threshold for attracting, you know, talent is a factor in where these major employers cite themselves, right? That's why the Bay Area, because all the companies are there and they can just poach from each other, is still viable even with all the hassle of California and how expensive that is. Places like New York and Boston, for the same reason, Boston producing the university talent. But one of the things that as we talk to employers here, if they can get the engineers here, they tend to stay here. They may move around, but they're not leaving the Space Coast. And when you talk about place branding and identity, and the visitor center definitely has an economic impact. I don't want to minimize the value of our tourism sector here in Brevard County. I always say coming from Nevada, we said the same thing. We love tourists. I mean, that's the reason why we don't have a state income tax in Florida, right? Because we charge the but I think, Joe, what you're getting at is there's just something so unique about this area. And if you can have a world-class job and, like I said, you walk out on your driveway and see, Bob and Doug, race into space. How cool is that? And I'll send it to Erin so she can share it with y'all. But we did a soft launch, and again, you talk about kind of COVID, derailing some what I thought would be pretty neat efforts. And so we did a soft launch of this Live Big Space Coast website, which is broken down into lifestyles. And it's our high-end talent attraction website. We've got all the major employers, jobs pages on there. And we did a nice successful digital ad campaign where we got hundreds of click-throughs to the jobs page, which is exactly what we wanted. But we came up with this Live Big guide to what I called spacecraft beer pairings, right? Launches and loggers. And the reason we did that is everybody has this sleepy image of the Space Coast, and maybe they think of the Space Coast, engineer as the guy in short sleeve dress shirt and the horn rimmed glasses. Marsha, maybe that was your dad, right? It's and then that's great. We love those guys, but now we've got engineers who are making these spacecrafts. We got engineers who are making great craft beer. I think pretty much all the breweries in Brevard County are headed by engineers, and so we used it as kind of a spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. We figured there's people that are into space, there's people that are into craft beer, and the Venn diagram of engineers who like both is probably a pretty big circle. So it came out really nice. Black Tie Digital here locally did it. It looks really cool. So you talk about the fun factor of the Space Coast, and Joe, I think that's what you're getting at with the dining under a Saturn V rocket. We paired, what Playa Linda's paired with, one of the rockets or one of the spacecraft. I really like Intracoastal. We had them with, like the Blue Origin, because they did a beer for Blue Origin. It's a neat thing, and it kind of gets at to the personality here that maybe locals know it, but we haven't been what I call culturally confident enough to project that to other people. I go back to Austin. I worked for a member of Congress in DC who represented Austin. And, that was a place that Texas is pretty culturally confident. Marcia's heard this spiel, but you talk to a Texan, and whether they're living in DC or New York, their ultimate goal is to get back to Texas. And it's every one of them. And, they are almost shocked that you don't bow down to Texas the way they feel about it. But Austin had this good aspirational sense of what it was, which was this place that was going to be, entrepreneurial and tech friendly. And then, if you wanted to be a barista or, a robot engineer, you could be both. And everybody is in this cool place, but it frankly wasn't always the case. And I think we've got a lot of sort of geographical advantages over them. So, I'm not saying image is everything, but it's a part of it. And, when you you get over somebody maybe having to do 2 years of research to decide that this is the best place to be, as opposed to, yeah, the Space Coast is where it's at. You know, I want to drink a beer on a beach and watch a rocket go to Mars. You know, that helps the HR people here, and that helps the businesses expand. And you know, that it almost becomes like they need to be here as opposed to us trying to win them over.
Well, and I will add that I started that it's ours to lose. I said that before shuttle retirement. I had the pleasure of joining in on, and as a listener, I was a fly on the wall, wasn't allowed to speak, but listening to some of these startup aerospace companies at the time talking about what they needed to do, what they wanted to do, and they made it very, very clear that the legacy that exists here exists nowhere else on the planet, and they all wanted to be here, but there were reasons that they weren't coming here, and we had to overcome those. So it was really some interesting conversations with NASA folks, with community folks at the time, about what they needed and what they saw as the impediments of why they weren't all flocking here. And that has been a really painful process to try and overcome. We still haven't overcome some of them, but it is getting better. So when I say, you know, literally when I say it's ours to lose, that's where that came from. And it's because of that legacy of being able to walk under that Saturn V, for these guys to be able to stand in buildings where heroes stood and went places that we haven't been to since. They feel that so intensely, and they want to be here because of that. They want to stand on a piece of ground that Neil Armstrong may have walked on. I get that feeling when I'm in the halls of Congress and I'm up there walking around in these amazing buildings, and I think, God, who stood here? You know, like, think about, I'm looking at the wear pattern on a step in this marble building, and I'm thinking, who in my history books actually took these stairs? And that's how these companies feel about the Space Coast. They're using facilities and equipment and going places where their heroes went and may have stood, and that means an incredible amount to them. And so that's actually where I started saying, hey guys, it's ours to lose, more strongly than I ever have before, because they were very clear and said, listen, we want to be here, but right now it's not in the cards because of this, and this. And through the EDC, through the county commission, through this community, we started addressing those issues to be able to tick them off the list and say, okay, we've taken care of that one. What else is the impediment? And you can see the fruits of that happening now.
If absolutely. And if we're all stuck inside, you need something to do. If you haven't watched the Netflix documentary on the SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch, there's a pretty cool scene where Elon is over at 39A, and you can just see he's like, this is the most, you know, significant, you know, launch site on the planet. You know, this is, you know, the history that's happened here is unlike anywhere else. And, you know, I've never seen him actually so sincere and enthusiastic about anything as in that scene. You know, you talk about you know, Kitty Hawk. I mean, this is a whole nother level, and you know, that absolutely 100% carries weight, and it's something that we should leverage and cultivate. At the same time, you know, the legacy of all those people that, you know, worked on the space program over the decades, you know, this was a very narrow window for us to capitalize on that. And like I said, KSC, as the shuttle's winding down, you go from that being an asset to a liability, you know, in terms of, you know, there's a lot of infrastructure here that is either, you know, it's toxic or it just doesn't work with anything nowadays. And, you know, that took a lot of investment on the part of Florida to get that, you know, up and running. And, you know, Florida, compared to other states, does not have a really robust economic development toolkit. Locally, we've got the ad valorem tax abatement that went down to referendum in Cape Canaveral last year. It's up in Melbourne this year, and that's something where you can have 100% of nothing, but if you give a little piece on that abatement up front, it more than pays for itself 10 times over. So, and I think if you look at the investment that was made at KSC and everything that's happened since, this is you're talking about the economy of the area, and it's the difference between you can say, well, retirees maybe are not as worried about the schools or the economy as some other people. They just want to have low cost of living or low taxes or whatever. But it's the difference between kids and grandkids and families staying here long term, and this being the place we all know it can be. So yeah, absolutely. And it's about confronting challenges and leveraging our there are structural weaknesses, and a good example is we've got all this great investment from Blue Origin, but when it came time for them to cite where they were going to manufacture their rocket engines, we just didn't have the package to win that, and it went to Alabama, I believe. So just because you do have a foothold doesn't mean it's a given that that's going to continue. And SpaceX with they were making the BFR Starship, and I think a lot of that work has sort of gone to Texas just because they were able to move a little bit more quickly and get more welding talent. So there's a workforce issue, and there's just a lot of different bottom line fundamentals that go into it. That as much as we want that legacy to be a part of it,